you'll be able to see the beautiful video and hear the melody of this song. So make sure you check it out. And also we will have available on the show notes page, like I mentioned before, a little bit of a breakdown of what is timba music, so you can get a little bit more of the history and learn about the different styles of music that come from Cuba, because it really is a rich history. Now in the next part of the song, this is where we're going to find some of our uses of the verb to have. So the next part, they're actually repeating sort of what was said at the beginning. Vengo de donde el sol caliente la tierra. I come from where the sun warms the earth. Which, you know, if you've been to Cuba, you know it's definitely warm there and all the Caribbean. La tierra donde nací, donde viviré. The land where I was born, where I will live. Por eso te canto ahora mi canción. That's why I'm singing my song now. Para que sepas el porqué, a mí me dicen Cuba. So para que sepas is so that you'll know. El porqué. So this is sort of the reason why. So it's porqué. You may be familiar with porqué meaning why when you're asking a question, or because when you're giving the reason for something. But in this case, it's el porqué. So it's actually used as a noun here. It's saying the reason, like the because, right? Or the why, right? The reason why. A mí me dicen Cuba. So they call me Cuba. So think of a mí me dicen Cuba, which is literally, or they say Cuba to me, right? But in this case, it's actually more like the verb llamarse, right? Like me llaman Cuba. They call me Cuba. So think of it that way instead of, you know, they're saying Cuba to me or something like that. Now, this para que sepas, he's used that a few times. That's actually pretty common. It's like so that you know, right? It's like I'm telling you this so that you know. I'm explaining something to you. I'm breaking this down for you, okay? So if I say para que sepas, you know, it's like so that you know. So that's something that you can actually use when you're explaining something to someone to add a little bit more emphasis and flavor into the conversation. And then after that, there's this part like the coro where there's the singers in the background are saying over and over again, para saber de verdad lo que es sentirse cubano. So to know for real what it's like to be Cuban, or to really know, like para saber de verdad, it's like to know the truth or to know really. Lo que es sentirse cubano. So what it is to feel Cuban, to feel like you are Cuban. Tienes que haber nacido en Cuba. You must have been born in Cuba. Tienes que haber vivido en Cuba. You must have lived in Cuba. So, you know, very straightforward. He's saying if you really want to understand what I'm saying, like everything he's talking about in the song, you have to have been born or lived in Cuba to really get sort of the real feeling of what he's talking about in the song, okay? So pay attention here. We have tienes que haber nacido en Cuba. So you may be familiar with this. Tienes is the verb tener. And that is one of the ways to say to have in Spanish. So let's get into that. Let's talk about those three different ways that you can say to have in Spanish, because in English we just say it the same way, right? But in Spanish you have to be aware that if you want to express one of these uses of to have, that you have to do it a little bit differently and use a different verb. You can't just say it like we do in English. So let's take a look at these lines in particular with the tienes que haber nacido en Cuba y tienes que haber vivido en Cuba. So in English, we used to have in many different ways, like I said before, but in Spanish, there's really two main verbs that you use to say to have. And those verbs are tener and haber. Tener is used to mean to have, as in to have something, meaning you possess it or you own it. So this could be something simple like tienes un libro, you have a book. Tengo un teléfono, I have a phone. So very simple. If you have something, literally you're in possession of it at that moment, or if it's something that you own, you can use the verb tener. So that's one way to use to have. Tener is also used to express to have to, as in to have to do something. So for example, tienes que ir means you have to go. So in this case, tener is actually used with the infinitive form of another verb. So in the example I just gave you, tienes que ir, then ir is the infinitive of the verb. Okay, so we're not conjugating or changing the form of ir, but you know because I said tienes que, I'm talking to you because that's the tú form. So tú tienes que ir. You have to go. Okay, so far we have tener un libro, and we can also have tener que hacer algo. So those are two ways so far to say to have. So now we know how to say to have something or to have to do something. Haber, on the other hand, is used to express to have done something, usually in the recent past, and it's always used with another verb to help it out. And we'll get into that in a minute, but first, let's talk about the forms of the verb haber because it is a very irregular verb. First, I want to point out that haber is actually spelled H-A-B-E-R or H-A-B-E-R. And as you know, the letter H in Spanish is silent unless it comes after the letter C. So let's take a look at how to say haber in its different forms. So if I want to say I have, yo he. You have, tú has. She has, ella ha. They have, ellos han. We have, nosotros hemos. So that's how I would say to have in the different forms with the verb haber. But this is really incomplete, right? We do need another verb to finish the thought. We can't just say I have. Like you have to answer the question, I have what, I have to do what, or I have done what, okay? So we use the past participle after the verb haber. And that's words in English like done, eaten, been, gone, broken. That's the idea of the past participle. And in English, it's what we call the present perfect. Now, I know this is getting a little grammar heavy, so if you want a deep dive on the grammar, you can check out the Spanish Grammar Mastery course, where I break down in detail when to use the present perfect, how to conjugate the verb haber, and the past participle, which is a whole other verb form that you need to use with haber. And I have one specific module of the Spanish Grammar Mastery course that's dedicated to the present perfect, and it will break all of this down for you with plenty of examples and, of course, more songs. So check out the show notes page at learnspanishconsalsa.com/118 if you want to get a link to that course so you can get more in depth on the topic. For now, I'm just going to give you a brief overview with some examples just so you get the idea of what I'm talking about, because I want to explain how it's used in the song, which is a little bit more of an advanced concept. So if you're a beginner, I want you to be satisfied after these next few examples. And if you're more advanced, stay tuned because I will be challenging you to really understand a different way to use these verbs that you may not have been familiar with before. All right? So let's take a look at how we use the present perfect in Spanish. I could say, yo he estado allí. Yo he estado allí. I have been there. Tú has comido. Tú has comido.